Good morning, everybody. I am Steve McCary. I'm a platform integration manager here at Q-SYS on our strategic accounts team. I am thrilled to be joined today by, a man who needs no introduction. He is the star of many of our training videos, the one and only Nate McCarrick. Good morning, Nate.
Good morning. Happy to be here with this only gentleman who is the closest I've ever come to having someone who shares my last name.
It is remarkably close. All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into our escape room from Infocom. So we've done this escape room twice now. We did this at ISE and we did it at Infocom, and it was I like to think it was a huge hit. Best escape room ever. People have tried lots of different escape rooms, but I think this one is definitely the best.
Globally agreed. Best anyone has ever done.
I've talked to a lot of people about escape rooms, and they've all agreed that this is the best escape room ever.
100% of the people right on this call agree.
Yes. So we are going to take a look at what is an escape room, in case some of you are not fully versed on this concept, and how you can do something like this in Block Controller. Okay, so I'm going to play this quick video for you guys. This is some people who are telling you how wonderful our escape room was.
Really enjoyed the escape room, very thoughtfully designed, but I think it's very par for the course for everything Q-SYS does.
It was fun. It was built well. Teamwork required. Really good day one, setting the bar high.
It was very challenging, and we came that close to escaping the room.
This room was chock full of stuff to plug and play with, and we knocked it out the park, man.
We were down on our luck. We were sweating bullets, but we got through it. It was great. It's fun to see what this other technology, this stuff can do.
I bet it's even better with audio. All right, so that was sort of just some of the reactions from this, but let's dive into it, okay? So let's take a look at the concept of an escape room. We'll talk about sort of what it is, how it comes to be. We're going to talk a little bit about the function, what we did in our escape room, and then, lastly, the programming. How did we accomplish these things? So let's talk about the concept of an escape room. Nate, will you just run us through your, elevator pitch of what is an escape room?
Well, yeah, I mean, for some of us geeks out here in the world who love escape rooms, it's weird that people might not know what an escape room is. I do escape rooms all the time, either with my friends or with my kids. An escape room is essentially it is a small room, usually the size of a small office. It could be like 10 by 10. It could be a little bit larger, where someone has just created an environment that is full of puzzles, and you usually have about 1 hour to solve all the puzzles, and then you escape the room. You're never physically locked in, but the idea is that you are you're trapped in that room until you get out. And there are, this is kind of a fun, easy business concept because you can do an escape room anywhere. You've got an office somewhere, you can turn it into an escape room. And these kind of popped up, boy, man, I don't know, about 10 years ago, they really started to become real popular. And then there's such a wide variety of installation levels. Like some people, it's really just like a desk and some pictures on the wall and a bunch of locks, and you have to figure out a code that unlocks each lock. But then there are other ones that really go extremely in depth, and the build out is like a full Hollywood production level, and some of them are horror themed. Sometimes there's other actors in the room that are engaging with you. Some of them can be really quite elaborate and lots of fun. And generally speaking, these are much, much smaller venues than you would traditionally see us talk about putting Q-SYS in, right? When we talk about doing theme parks and government chambers and cruise ships, this is a very tiny execution of Q-SYS. But I have known people that have used Q-SYS in escape rooms. And I did an escape room once, and the game master, usually there's someone from the company that is there monitoring your progress and is there to provide hints for you and clues and nudge you in the right direction if you so desire. After I did the escape room, I came out and they go, "Hey, are you the Q-SYS guy?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they go, "We're using Q-SYS in here." So I did, we did a little tour of their escape room and how they were using the tech, and that was really kind of exciting. And it's it's true. It may seem like overkill to use Q-SYS here, but you certainly can. And I kind of bugged Patrick, who is my video buddy and the vice president of marketing who organizes all of our trade shows. For a couple of years, I was like, we should do an escape room. We should just do it. We should take a small little section of the booth and we should just make a little escape room. And wouldn't that be fun? It'd be silly and stupid, but why not? Let's give it a shot. And I think over a couple of years, eventually he gave in and let me do it.
He just ran out of reasons for you not to.
Yeah, so this was the first napkin sketch when I was pitching it. Basically just a small room. The idea would be that there's one big screen on the far side. There was going to be I wanted at least, I didn't want it to all just be touch screens. The idea of putting Q-SYS into a room like this inherently means there's probably going to be a bunch of touch panels and interacting with those and controlling things. But I personally, I really like when escape rooms have some sort of physical elements to them. You have to do something and move something around. So on the right side, I wanted some sort of large physical puzzle. And the idea was that maybe we would have just this rat's nest of different cable types, and you have to figure out how to plug each one into the right area. And then we can still use Q-SYS to validate whether the cables are being connected in the right places, but it's something physical to be done. And one of the very first ideas for the puzzles that I had, we're thinking about what kind of things can we use to use Q-SYS appropriately and to showcase what Q-SYS can do in escape room. One of the first ideas I had was that you would control a camera that's up in a corner. And if you can move that camera can perhaps see something in the room that you could not see as a human. So you have to be able to know how to move the camera and aim the camera. And then in this original version, it was the idea that it would like look down this long tube that looks in a box that is otherwise impossible to be seen from the ground. And so it was those kinds of ideas that started off the concept and then just started kind of running with the concept of are we doing this? And if we are, how do we execute it? What do we do with it?
Yeah. So, and then this is a picture of our booth. For those of you that managed to come see it, thank you. We had the Q-SYS Labs. This was our identical, our twin escape rooms that were sitting right front and center in the booth. So, the interesting part is that when people build an escape room that they're going to charge people money for and is going to be a permanent installation, it is just that. They get all the time in the world to prep it and build it and run it and test it. And we had how long, Nate?
Oh, well, when we set up at a trade show, we have maximum of 4 days on the ground between when we are literally starting from scratch of putting walls up to when the first human is in the trade show expecting to be entertained, right? And that means that it's less than 4 days of actual time that you are putting things on walls and running cable. And that is not a lot of time at all. And so we do a pre-build here in Costa Mesa for most of our experiences like this. So that was true for this escape lab as well. I also did everything I could to build all the pieces of it here in my office to make sure things were functional, but there's only so much you can do before you're in the venue. You can do all the prep in the world, and then once you're actually in the space, things change. Something doesn't fit the way it was supposed to. You got to reprogram on the fly. So it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to do in a very, very short amount of time for something that's then going to last for 3 days. Then you're going to tear it down. But that's part of, like they said, it's part of the course. That's what we do with all of our stuff at trade shows. So we're used to it. We're used to that really quick, very busy 4 days of work.
Yeah, I happened to be in the office a fair amount while this was being built. Well, this was obviously going on while we were doing a lot of work for the Costa Mesa Experience Center. So I was back and forth through the area. And there were a handful of times where I would walk through and Nate would be like, "Hey, come stand right here." come push this button, come touch this thing, and I want to see what happens when you do this thing, and I need to know what it is. And I would just come and blindly do whatever the thing was, and then he would make some sort of a face, and then he would be like, fine. And I would walk off, and I had no context to it or anything like that. But
I definitely
figured,
subjected random strangers to, hey, if you had to plug these cables in, how would you do it? I need to see how you fail so I know how to prepare for that failure.
which I would love to say has been the only time that we grab random strangers in the Costa Mesa office and make them do things for us. That happens more often than not. All right, so last is or one of the last things we wanted to talk about is, you know, the constraints of doing this in a trade show.
Yeah.
And plus, I want you to explain what it is that we're doing in that bottom left picture.
Absolutely. So the idea of doing the escape room would not have been feasible at a trade show in a normal capacity, because as I said, normally escape rooms are a 60-minute experience. So you go in and you're there the whole time. And if we were going to do one escape room that lasts 60 minutes, then a trade show only lasts 8 hours long, right? So we'd only be able to get 8 groups in a day, and of the 3 or 4 days, depending on if it's ISE or Infocom, that's not a lot of traffic, and it's pretty hard to make a case that that's going to be something that's really valuable for us to spend so much time and money building if we're only getting 50 people through. So we broke the idea down and they said, okay, rather than an hour-long thing, it's going to be a 10-minute experience. It's going to be something fast and short and rather urgent. And, you know, a little bit closer to 15 when you add on the, you know, you're watching an intro video and you're doing some onboarding and outroing and stuff. But about 15 minutes per group means that we can get 32 groups per day times the number of days. So 150, 200 groups. And then that math didn't work out. It's fine. No one yell at me. But then also we said, hey, why don't we do 2 of them? Because the nice thing is that it takes a very small amount of real estate. The room for the escape room, again, was about a 10 by 10 space. Why do something once if you can do it twice for twice the amount of money? Is the solid adage. So we did 2 escape rooms side by side that could run concurrently. You know, if one's running, the next one is ready to be loaded in. That means that we're doubling the amount of people that can get through this thing. We really did have our, like clockwork teamwork on this one, where you would have one team watching the intro video, which is about 45 seconds. While they're watching it, the person would go inside the room and reset everything the previous group was doing. They come out just as soon as they're finished resetting everything. The video's wrapping up. You put the group in there, you start the thing, you run into the back closet where you can see me. We've got this little tiny hole in between the walls of the trade show booth, where we've got our own laptop set up where we can listen in to what the group is doing. We can interact with them as like a character, as the game master, so we can give them hints and answer questions if they need to, and also monitor the room, make sure nothing's going wrong, and react accordingly if we need to. We had a couple of knobs that we could adjust in the room. Like if a group was not doing well, we were like, okay, we need to give them a little help. We could maybe dial down the difficulty on a certain couple puzzles, things like that, so make sure that people aren't walking away angry. And then you're watching them. So as soon as you see that they're about to win, you take off your headphone, you run over, you open up the door, you say, hi, good job. They come out, you get the next group watching the video, and you reset it. And that is in perpetuity for 8 hours a day, 4 days straight, after we were working for 4 days straight of 18-hour days building the thing. So it's we were ragged at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, the aviators were a must.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, those were issued to us as game masters. The funny part is, when we did this at ISE, we had only one game master for both rooms. Ooh. And that was a challenge.
That was an exercise in multitasking for sure.
Yeah, so then we decided, and we didn't have a dedicated room. It was legitimately a 3-foot shelf in the back room that we sort of decided to put together at the last minute. And then, at least for Infocom, it was a full-on area dedicated for being game masters.
That shelf that you see in the corner there was intended for the laptop rather than also sharing it with all the concessions and people's backpacks. So it was a little bit nicer.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. Before we step into the next section, I did want to remind everybody, I didn't say this at the top, but you will, within about a week or so of this webinar, you will get an email with a recording of it. So yes, don't worry about if you miss anything or feel like you wanted to go back and watch this again over and over again. Who wouldn't? Um, so yes, you will get a recording of this webinar within about a week or so. Okay, so these are some pictures of what it looked like when we started working on it as a very, very blank canvas.
And that was already like probably a day and a half into those 4 days, because there's
Correct.
already walls and a ceiling, which the booth build team has put up.
Yeah, and the shelf.
Yeah, well, I put up the shelf, mind you.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
That's right.
Good for you. Well done.
Yes,
sir.
thank you.
And here it is beginning to come together. The white box in the corner holds the rack, and yeah, just getting everything installed.
That gentleman right there his name is Sean Quelty. He's actually a we outsourced a little bit of muscle on this one. That device on the wall next to him was the physical puzzle piece that I was talking about. And when we were building this, I knew that I was not going to have the time to construct that myself. And so Sean's a buddy who works in theater, and he has a lot of experience building props and building elaborate sort of immersive things. And so we asked him and say, hey, this is probably up in your alley. We've got this idea for this puzzle. We know how we want to do. Can you construct it for us? So he came along and he helped us also with all the video and the audio. Because realistically, it was worth a reminder that none of this is in me and Steve's job description as employees here at Q-SYS. This is all just gravy that they say, oh, by the way, you're also in charge of this at the trade show. So we knowing that there's no way I would have been able to do everything, we had to outsource a couple things like that. It's we also do the tours in the trade show, and I had previously programmed one of the more complicated rooms in that tour, where you like the audience would like vote on which experience they wanted to see, and it would kind of randomize all these different elements, and it had a lot of kind of show control-y stuff going on it. And when this escape room came by, I thought, you know what, this one's probably going to be an easier one to program, because it's just a matter of pressing buttons and things like that. And I was very wrong. I underestimated the complexity.
Do you want to go back to doing the entertainment room?
No, I could happily build escape rooms for the rest of my life. When I retire, that's my plan. I'll be an old man who runs escape rooms. That sounds delightful to me. Lots and lots of stuff on the walls. If there's anything that defines escape rooms, it's the amount of clutter that distracts you, and red herrings of things that you think might be puzzles that are not. So you'd have to do a lot of investigation, hunting around for clues, trying to figure out what is relevant and what is not. There we see Patrick and Britt and Jacob all from my team.
These must be pictures from ISE.
These are ISE pictures, yes.
Because no one is wearing long sleeves and beanies in Orlando in June.
They don't turn on any air conditioning or heating or cooling for trade shows in those 4 days. Which, let me tell you, when you're doing the trade show in Dubai, is the worst.
That was fun.
Now it's coming together. We got lights. We got everything up on the walls. Things are operational.
All right. So so we'll start to talk about the function. Somebody did ask a question of which core you were using for this.
Oh, that's a good question. I actually used one core that ran both rooms at the same time, and it was a Core 110F. That was more because that was just something I had available in stock. Honestly, I could have run this with a Nano. I think like the programming load as far as the amount of processing power is not insane. I mean, I got a good number of peripherals in here, and I had thought about revamping the room to have two cores, one in room 1 and one in room 2, just for the sake of troubleshooting, so that if something were to go down, I could work on that room without taking down the other room. But I didn't, and it wasn't actually a problem at all in the end, where we just had the one core running both of them. Good question.
Right. All right. So now let us dive into the actual functionality. How did we make this thing work? So let's talk about the phases of the escape room.
Sure, just
pretty
some
much every
context so they know what we're talking
escape
about.
Yeah, pretty much every escape room has, an order of operations, right? There's a way to go about it. One of the things I thought was interesting about ours, having done loads of other people's, um, a lot of escape rooms that you go to are extremely linear, right? Like there are 8 things to accomplish, and you accomplish them in order to get to 8. One of the things that I thought was really cool about ours, and when we did our little intro pitch to the people that were going to go through it, your host always gives you a little bit of background and gives you some clues and whatnot. One of the biggest things that we emphasized to people was 2 major hints. The first of which was teamwork makes the dream work. There are tasks in here that you absolutely cannot do by yourself. And secondly, is that you can actually do tasks concurrently with ours. And I thought that was a really neat little wrinkle in this, is that while it was still linear and you did have to get from point A to point B, you could sort of diverge in the wood midway through. And I thought that was a really slick little area, or
Well,
a
that was
slick little
also
feature.
that's also almost a necessity of the short time frame, right? Was that if
Yeah.
we wanted people to accomplish lots of things, they had to split up. So really, there were 4 kind of major tasks they had to accomplish throughout the course of that escape room. First one, they kind of had to do together. Then 2 and 3, they could do in any order, hopefully working on them simultaneously. And then they kind of came back together again for the 4th one.
So yeah, so they did a little onboarding intro video. This just sort of set the mood, got them into the headspace of what they were going to be doing. And then there was a little start game. There was a task they had to do to technically actually start the game. We didn't tell people this going into it, but the timer didn't actually start until they finished the first task, because we wanted to have people keep moving. Oh, let's talk about the tasks. Task 1. This was finding the network ID. You want to take us through that?
Yeah. So the general idea of the escape room was that there was an evil technician who had kind of taken over this room and was using the technology against you, and you had to use Q-SYS to sort of correct things. And the end result was that you would have to use Q-SYS Reflect to log into this evil engineer's home lab and get information from his lab so that you could input a code to get out of the room. That's the kind of general idea. And so in order to do so, you need to figure out the name of the network you needed to connect to and the password of the network in order to log into it. And so the first one was you had to find the network ID, and that was written on like a Post-it note that was hidden somewhere in the room. I kind of mentioned the idea of using a camera to find the thing. It was not visible to a human on the ground, but you had to find a camera and steer it around up in the sky. But there was a giant wrinkle in the middle of that task in which the engineer interrupted the process and took over. And you had to fulfill this game essentially, where we had our Vision Suite running, and Vision Suite is a great way for tracking and automating tasks based on what someone's doing in frame. And the idea was that the camera was trying to keep track of how many humans it could see, and you had to make sure that your group fulfilled that number. So the engineer said, I need to see 3 people in frame, 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 3 people would have to jump into frame. The rest of your group would have to hide out of frame. And then every 5 seconds or less, that number would change. And so people are running back and forth across the room, hiding, holding things above their heads, trying to obscure their faces so they don't get counted in a very short amount of time. And then once that was fulfilled, a certain number of successes, then they got past that game. Then there was the wheel puzzle, that big contraption on the side, kind of like what I mentioned. It was a bunch of analog cables. You had to figure out what order to connect cables into, what ports they should connect to, using clues that you found elsewhere in the room that would tell you the proper sequence to do that. Once you did it, you would eventually get the password that logs you into the network. Then you take the network ID and you take the password ID, you log into Reflect. Then you are driving a camera. that is not even looking in the room. So this camera was connected somewhere else entirely in the trade show floor. So you were actually watching the tours that were walking through one of our other rooms, and you had to find the information in that room using the camera. And sometimes it was obscured because people were walking around and blocking it. A nice hurdle. But eventually you would figure that information out, and then you could come back to in your room, punch that puzzle into the exit code and get out. It's worth noting, I want to mention this, that I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I have seen other companies do escape rooms at trade shows, which are generally not actually an escape room. It's really more of a product demo, and maybe you interact in one minor way along the way, and then they talk to you about their product for a little bit longer.
It's very curated.
Yes, I was adamant that I did not want that. I did not want this to be just a Q-SYS product demonstration. I wanted it to feel like an actual escape room. And all of the puzzles, we were never yelling Q-SYS at you. We were never talking models at you. We were never talking anything like that. It was loud. It was scary. There were lights. There was drama. You had to genuinely figure these things out. And then the hope was that afterwards you thought to yourself, hey, how do they do that? Hey, how do they do that with Q-SYS? And I wanted that to be the selling point rather than us telling you, oh, well, you're interacting with the PTZ camera right now and it's capable of X, Y, Z. I did not want that.
Final task, get out.
And then you get out.
All right, so now let us talk about the actual programming that went into this. We are going to kind of jump into 3 of the different tasks that we had in here, and Nate is going to go through these. So we have one that's a little bit of a simple one, one that is a little more complicated, and one that was incredibly difficult. And Nate's going to show you how he did those. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah. Do my best to not give away all the secrets of it, because there's still possibilities that this escape room will come back around, and if anyone out there wants to do it, then I don't want them to get a secret head start by being on the webinar. If anyone in the webinar was in the escape room, you may see your name still on the leaderboards I'm going to show. That'll be exciting. All right, let me share my screen. So first one I want to talk about, let me go hide all that. You seeing that there, Steve?
Yes, sir.
Was something on the very, very simple side. Oh, by the way, as I show you my design, I will with full-throated transparency let you know that when we build these rooms for trade shows, we know that they're probably intended on only running for a couple of days. So sometimes our schematics are going to look just like absolute rat's nests of stuff, because I'm not going the due diligence of really organizing everything the way I probably would in an actual installation. So if you see some of my mess here and you're like, wow, that is the messiest schematic page ever, that's because I thought it would be burned to the ground after 3 days and never needed to see the light of day again. Anyways, the first task that we had talked about, where they walked into the room, they had to just connect. They had to connect the room to a network switch. Like, the idea was that the engineer had disconnected everything, and so the first thing you got to do in order to even start the room is to hook it back up. And so, okay, that was actually a bit of a puzzle, because if we relied on them connecting a cat cable into a switch, that's not going to provide the immediate feedback of positive reinforcement that we would need, because whatever you're connecting into a cat cable, it's going to take a little bit of time to initialize, right? Like, you're going to have to wait for that device to get power and boot up. If we were waiting for some sort of a status indicator from a Q-SYS device to give them the positive feedback that you did it. So when we went about this, we actually just kind of cheated. The first thing they did when they connected the cat cable was we took a cat cable that was coming out of the core. I fed it just a Boolean that was true. It's just a toggle button that's true. And we stripped that cable down and just found 2 wires and just sent bare copper out of one GPIO via a cat cable that was basically dangling from the sky. They connected it to a wall plate in the wall. The opposite side of that wall plate was another cat cable that we stripped down, found the same bare wire, and put that into a GPIO coming in. So it was not actually a network connection. It was literally just copper that was connecting. But when we got that finished connection, we had a true, we had a Boolean that we could use to automate any number of things. And so that comes through and indicates to me they've completed the first task, and that starts the sequence of XYZ that happens when they do that. So that was kind of a fun little thing. Actually, James Martin in our UK office had done something similar in their office, and he was the one that clued me on for that. He was like, "Hey, this is making it a lot easier for you." So so a lot of times in escape rooms, there's things like that. You connect a thing, and the act of connecting it, you need that immediate like bloop, something to indicate that it worked. And so that's how we got around it for our cat connection. I want to point out in something in here. Steve mentioned this at the top, that this is almost entirely done in block controller. And there are a lot of elements in here that you may think to yourself you would need to go into full-fledged Lua scripting for. And I did it in block controller just because I'm really familiar and comfortable with the block controller. We just released the Control and UCI training series. I teach the intermediate class that focuses entirely on block controller. It just matches really well with me. I can get through scripting if I have to, but I find that I'm faster in blocks, generally speaking. And most of the things in this, as I thought about it, I thought, yeah, I think I can do that in blocks, so I'm going to do it in blocks. But there are things I'm also using control components for. And one of the things we talk about a lot about in that training series is knowing when to use one particular type of programming versus another. You'll see that there's a lot of connections between my block controllers. Here's a block controller, here's a block controller, here's a block controller. And I've got a lot of tags, leaving some of them and going into another one. And I very well could have accomplished that using named components instead. I could have turned a control on, and then in another block controller, I could have read that as a named component using script access and said, hey, I know that that LED is active, so that's an indicator that this one can start. But I am a big fan of a paper trail inside Q-SYS. I like being able to see when a thing is on and follow it to its next point in the chain. And especially for something like this, where I'm segregating my my code in certain ways. This code only performs this particular task, and it's started when the user has done some other task. I want to be able to hover my mouse over a control pin and see that the output of the first one is true, and the incoming flag into the next one is also true. That is a very visceral way for me to do real quick troubleshooting, so I can validate, yes, this has occurred, this has occurred, this has occurred, and I don't need to open up any of my code for it. So there is a time and place for control components and for control tags versus using name components, and this is a place where I found it to be far more useful to give myself that tangible physical wiring to track from one component to another.
Well, then working your way through in difficulty, let's look at another task, which is the body count game, because this is where we actually do start getting into your block controllers.
Absolutely. So the body count game, as I mentioned, was that idea of having our Vision Suite server watching and counting the number of people in frame. And so we have this number that was coming from Vision Suite that's basically saying how many IDs are inside the last event. And so we just had a giant trigger zone that was the entirety of the frame in Vision Suite, and it would keep track of the number of bodies that it was tracking in there. We fed that number to, just to a custom control, and that fed into the logic of our body count game. Now, I would recommend, this is a kind of really fun way to get started if you haven't with block controller, which is to build yourself some little game. Whether it's building tic-tac-toe or Connect 4, I don't know what it is. If you can think your way around a pretty simple game, you can probably build it in block controller. And that's what I did. This is actually probably the first thing that I coded for the room, just to verify whether or not this idea would work at all. And it's not that complicated. This script is not super long. A handful of functions, handful of event handlers, and that's about it. And the idea basically is this, that when the game starts, when it triggers start, then we're going to do one round of the game. And first thing we're doing is we're setting its victory Boolean to false. So it says, hey, you have not won yet. We're going to reset everything. We're going to do one round of the game. And then a round of the game is defined by this function over here. And essentially it's going to get a random number that it sends to the screen that tells you how many humans it wants to do. It's going to validate whether or not it matches. So, hey, if the number of humans we want equals the number of humans that it's actually getting from Seer Vision, then we're going to run the success function. If not, then it runs the failure function. Okay, so what are those functions in here? Let's see. The success function is this guy here. It's doing a number of things. It's going to play a sound effect. It's going to increase the pitch of the beeping in the room, because this is like a really urgent thing where there's we're trying to stress people out. It's decreasing the round length of the next round so that each round gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And then eventually, if they have matched the right number of things, if their successes matches the number of things we required, then we run the victory information. And if not, then it resets and they start over again. And there's not much more to it than that. There's a couple of fun things in here where I am. There's one where the random number that it's set to had to be dependent on the number of people in their group. So as they're going in, we're taking their team name, we're taking how many people are in their group size. And that way I know, hey, there's only 5 people in this group, so I can't ever give a number that's higher than 5 for this to track for, or else they can't accomplish it. But we then added what I'm calling the bonus number. The bonus number was equal to 2. So it could actually ask for 7 faces in the room, because there was a way that you could basically call me and Patrick, our faces, up onto the video behind them. And we would, Vision Suite would see us and our faces and think that we're humans. And they would count our faces as part of the count. Now, we realized that a lot of people didn't figure that out. So this bonus number was one of those things that we could dial down as a game master to say, hey, if these people are really struggling, I'm going to dial that variable down to 0 so that it never is higher than the number of people in their group. And that's a good benefit of when you are programming, trying to avoid hard coding things. Like this was a variable that I could control externally from an admin panel, rather than just putting the number 2 in there, because then I wouldn't be able to edit it. I did that a lot in the course of this programming. And it's a good programming principle in general. Avoid hard coding something that you can instead make something that you can reference and change. For instance, a lot of these scripts in here required the loading of a video file from our video signage player and then playing it. So I had to call the name of that file a lot of times through a lot of different scripts. If I was going to hard code the names of those files in all of these different scripts, and then we had to change the names of those files, that would have been a nightmare for me to track down in all the scripts and find every single instance of it. And so instead, I kept a bank of those video files over here. And this is a great place to use named components, because here I could have all of those individual scripts reference this one named component and the file within it. And that way, if something changed here, it wouldn't matter. That would propagate forward to anywhere who was recalling that particular control. And it also made it really easy for us to do different languages, because the language that they chose in Infocom, we had the option between English and Spanish. It would just change and concatenate on a new tag at the end of the file name, either EP or either EN or SP in this case. And then that would automatically change this entire list, which means that all of those other scripts would reference this new file name, and I didn't have to change anything in any of the code for all those other areas. So lots of little things like that to think about will make your life easier when you need to edit things. Same idea, not to go back on it, but in this in the body count game, the number of rounds that had to be successful was a variable, because we didn't know if we wanted them to do 5 rounds or 10 rounds or 3 rounds. We didn't know until we were running the thing to see how good people were at it, to kind of tweak it in for human behavior. So rather than hard coding in, it's 5 rounds, I made that, again, an admin available option that we could dial in on ourselves. So good programming principles
let's
to keep in
get
mind.
to the most intricate part of this, which is the leaderboards that we had running. So outside of the rooms,
yes,
we had a display that was showing a UCI that was this leaderboard. And the truly impressive part about this is that there was a singular leaderboard, a master leaderboard, if you will. However, we also kept a leaderboard based on the group sizes so that you could see how you stacked up against other 4-player groups or whatnot. So,
yeah, this was by far the trickiest thing. That probably would have been easier with Lua, but I was down the block controller path, and so I stuck with it. Yeah, keeping track of data was tricky, and the fact that I had 2 rooms running at the same time, both of them feeding information in, just made that twice as difficult. Now, if you were doing this with Lua, you probably could do some really easy things where you just put this information into a table and you say, hey, I'm going to input the Mean Green fighting team into index number 407 in my table for that room. And then you go through and you run a loop and you get rid of all the nils and you smash them all down. And now you've got everything in order and you can sort them. Not quite as possible with block controller, because block controller handles tables in different ways. Block controller, they're all called arrays, and arrays are more like lists than true tables, because in an array, every single item in your table is a sequential integer, no matter what. So it's like you have item number 1 is Jimmy. Item number 2 is Johnny. Item number 3 is Sally. And you can't really break that 1, 2, 3 list order of them, which made it really hard because I could no longer rely on putting in a team name at a certain number like I would have preferred to do with Lua. So what I had to do is this looks like it's 2 bits of information. It looks like a score and a team name, but instead I had to smash this in together. It's just one string. It is a string that has their score, then it has a handful of spaces, and then has their team name. Well, that created another new problem because now it's a string and I can't sort by strings because the numbers in those strings are not actual numbers. They're just ASCII characters. So I can't reorder these based on what their score is when I need to insert something. So my leaderboard logic in here, it's still fully possible, but it required a lot of kind of fun array manipulation. Where I'm creating the leaderboards for each of the rooms. And then I've got, my functions that are essentially taking the data and storing that in there. One thing that's really important is that I had to store all this information as controls rather than variables within the script, because controls are pervasive. The data in a text field will retain itself when you reboot the system or power cycle it, whereas any variable that you generate within the scope of a code is generated when that code first runs, and so it is essentially 0 when the code first boots. So I had to take the data from these pervasive controls and fill up my leaderboards with them anytime that the system restarted. So I'm basically saving the data that way. I need to pull the name of the team, the number of players in the team, the language they were pulling from each of the rooms, and store those into arrays as well, so that they would wait for me until I needed them, because I couldn't just rely on the last group that ran, because the other group might win first. So I've got to remember that data, which room they are in at the time. And then when the rooms were complete, if the room is complete, I've got to do all these kinds of fun things. And essentially what I have to do is I'm stripping out the first 4 characters of their string, converting that into a number so that now I can do something with it. Then I run a loop that runs through the array and tries to find where the a higher score is, and when I find that, I then insert it one before that, and then I convert it back to a string and then populate it into the array, and then fill it all out again. So it was a bit of some coding parkour to do this with block controller, but it was entirely possible. And I'm doing a lot of arrays within arrays, and traversing those arrays in order to pull the right information out of them, and then feeding all that information into all of these constantly scrolling leaderboards. But it worked. It was fun. And once it's up, no one needs to know any of this.
That you're a ray of sunshine.
Well, why, thank you.
All right. Well, that covers everything that we wanted to share with you guys, or that we thought you would be interested in. So this leaves us with about 12 minutes or so please feel free to throw in some Q&A. I ran a quick poll, Nate, while we were doing that.
Yep.
And actually 10 of our attendees today went through the escape room.
Are any of them still on my, because I pulled this I think I pulled this file from the last day of the trade show. So anybody in those winning team names that's still in the memory? This one was the last one in room 1 was clearly a 5-player team. The last one in room 2 was a 6-player team. But those are the final scores, I believe. But yeah, any questions? I got got plenty more I can show in here, but we tried to pick out a couple of things we thought would be the most interesting. The metronomes.
What devices were used for lighting? What device was used as a controller? Was it DMX based?
It was DMX based. Yeah, we had a lighting console in there, and we were sending commands via UDP to that device. So it was on the Q-SYS side, it was just triggers that were leaving Q-SYS via a command button or command button components. And then on the other side, we just had that set up to listen on a particular port and pull up whichever queue we wanted. So pretty kind of standard show controlled there, where it was a professional, like theatrical environments that we were controlling the lighting system on.
Yeah, it's really just a hog taking OSC controls is all it was. It was not anything super crazy.
Yeah.
So this was a team. Best of 2. Yeah, some people were saying they should be in this. Will this be the level 3 certification design file?
That'd be lovely. I mean, we are working right now on the final exam for the Control and UCI training series, and there's a good bit of complicated stuff in there that you can do with blocks.
So Tim asks, how do you take the UCI and display it on the TV?
Excellent question.
All over the place.
Yeah.
In our trade show booths, and it is nothing more than a very small computer running UCI viewer in full screen.
Yeah. But one of the nice tricks that we figured out on that one too is that you can, when you have a UCI viewer, maybe I can pop this up real quick. So when you've got UCI viewer and it's running, you can, and I'm going to show all kinds of things on here. I probably shouldn't be showing. Here's my game master, or look at that. Anyways, if you have one of these, you can right click and create a bookmark. If you create a bookmark that has that UCI viewer already configured for which display it's going to be on and full screen and all the settings, like your tool bar is gone, you can then add that bookmark into the startup file of your Windows system, so that when the system reboots, the little pocket PC that we're using boots up and automatically runs UCI viewer and puts that thing full screen. That has been a lifesaver on trade shows, because whenever we are cycling something or rebooting something or power goes down or whatever, you don't need to open up your PC and reopen UCI viewer and retarget that UCI. Super, super handy.
I would say that on any given trade show booth that we do, there are probably no less than 15 small computers running UCI viewer or an interface into Designer or something like that. I know I had 4 of them in my Vision Suite room. That were showing like Vision Suite Designer and UCIs, and the it's how we do when we show the second page experience. We do stuff like that in them. That's how we are triggering that on and off.
Here's another fun one that I should show, which was in the in that analog puzzle on the UCI. We had a UCI that appeared to be running video. Oh, stand by. Let me disconnect this guy. We had a UCI that appeared to be running video that was not actually running video. And if I can get it up and running, I can show that to you. And this was not being done, obviously, with a UCI viewer. It was a touch panel. And here it is. It's not going to be quite as smooth here in on screen, but you can see that this appears to be running like a loop of a digital glitch, and that was intentional, right? It's supposed to look like this panel is kind of broken and glitching out. This is when you first walk in, but this is just cycling through 24 frames, one every 24th of a second, using a script to throw those different layers up onto the UCI so that it looks like full motion video when it's not. That was a fun sneak around too.
Yeah, so Gerardo's asking, did you, this is fun. Did you encounter any issues during the show? If so, what was done to remediate them? Yes.
For sure.
It is, we look really calm and cool and collected as we walk around the show. So when we do these booths, every section or every room has a lead. So like Nate led the escape room. Jeff Perkins, who may or may not also be in this call, he was the lead for the lobby area. I was the lead for the Vision Suite room. Tyler Sturtz was the lead for the knock, and Christian Cook was the lead for the high impact office area. And then the kiosks all have leads as well. But those of us who lead a room, we are the ones who are ultimately responsible for that room. So at any given point, if, say, a video is not playing when it is supposed to, or a sound or a light doesn't happen, or, hey, I walked over here and nothing happened, I pressed this button and it did this instead of this, there's a Teams channel that we run during all of the trade shows that is for the build crew. And whoever notices the problem quickly puts a note into that Teams channel. And then a lot of people behind the scenes spring into action to try to figure out what it was and why it was. And then there are a lot of times when people are between tours, we may have 20 or 30 seconds, and you may see someone come sprinting into a room, doing a thing very quickly, and then sprinting back out of the room, and no one is the wiser. So,
well, and it's funny too, because a lot of those issues come from the fact that we have such little time to prepare these things, right? Like when you're programming something, everything you can do to anticipate the ways that something could go wrong and then planning to accommodate for those issues is pretty important and will generally pay off your dividends. But there are some things that you cannot, or maybe you can, but you did not anticipate. Like, for instance, there was one in Jeff's room where in order to start the show, you press a button on the UCI. Well, that UCI was like where the people were walking through, and someone's elbow touched it as they walked by and started the show prematurely. And so, okay, well, now we've got a room that's running that shouldn't be running. So that night, okay, well, let's stop and add in a layer that pops up and says, are you sure you want to start the show after you hit the thing, because no one's going to hit the elbow twice. Human issues like that is a lot of programming, and that was a big issue. That was a big thing I had to worry about in the escape room, because there were so many things I had to anticipate. What might they do differently than the way I expect them to interact with this system? In a lot of systems, that's not a huge problem. With the escape room, I had to do a lot of figuring out, what if they solve this puzzle first? What if they disconnect this after they've already solved it? What does that do? What happens if they unplug the original cable that started the whole thing? And that's a validation for completing the puzzle. How can I reorient the room? Like, there was so many levels of consequences to things that people probably never even saw, because that they didn't end up happening, but that I had to program in ahead of time just in case, because I knew I wouldn't have the time to fix those on the fly while the system was running.
Yeah, we have all of the rooms end up having some weirdness like that. Like in the Vision Suite room, we obviously use Vision Suite to trigger different events based on where people go and stand. Well, the bottom line is that your tour guide will go stand in the exact same spot 5 or 6 times throughout the presentation. So there is you know, we actually break those demos down into like little Q segments, and we are running logic against what segment am I in versus when this person goes and stands there. I mean, I know I think I had 4 different cues that all played off the fact that you were in the middle of the room. So, you know, at one point it plays the little final countdown thing, and another point it starts tracking and, you know, moves a light and does all that other stuff. So yeah, we do our best. You know, we definitely spend some time at the end of every day. There's usually about 30 or 45 minutes of leads with their laptops out trying to fix things, especially after the first day.
Yep.
We get a lot of that. Let's see, Jason asked, do you do block programming for the games separate from the audio and video or simultaneously across all 3? It's all in the same core.
Yep.
Like it all together.
Yeah, I'm most of the audio was generated by the core. It was we were playing background music through the core, we're playing sound effects through the core. Some of the music and stuff was embedded in the videos, but again, we're controlling the video player, the media player in the room through Q-SYS as well. So all of that came from the same place.
All right. Any other questions? Well, let's see. I will recap a couple things. Number one, we will send you an email in about the next week or so. For everyone that registered, whether you attend or not, you will get a recap email, and you will get a video copy of this webinar. As always, I want to thank Nate for joining me on this one. We've had the pleasure of doing a couple of these before. If you did miss it and you do know somebody that you think might be interested in this, I believe we are doing this again next month.
I think that's the plan. Or I think it's October, but it's
maybe
close.
in October.
It's close to next month. We're almost in.
The bottom line is we will do this webinar again in the next 6 to 8 weeks or 68 weeks. I don't know.
Wow. I think I'm busy in 68 weeks specifically.
You don't know that.
I have a thing. I have a thing.
You don't have rehearsal. I'm sorry. My grandfather was a baseball coach, and anytime you asked him to do something he didn't want to do, he always had a game that
day.
Yeah. But yes, we will do this again. And thank you guys so much for taking the time and joining us. Please let us know if there's ever anything we can do for you. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much.